Akira hit the German comic shops in 1991. It was 9 years after its original release. The German publisher Carlsen created a real good campaign to promote it. It was quite a hype, but back then I decided for some reasons not to get it. One of the reasons was my small budget at the time that I needed for the Tardis, Skeutons and Love and Rockets, etc., who had a bigger appeal for me, and obviously still have. But I've never lost sight of Akira, and when there was some new edition in my comic book shop, I always stood there pondering whether to buy it or not. But haven't until now. Now there was no way that I could pass on this beautiful English 35th anniversary edition. 7 hardcover books, one of them an art book with sketches, covers and tons of additional stuff. All in a beautiful, even though a bit impractical box. Akira, in case you don't know it, is a sci-fi post-apocalyptic drama, more than 2,500 pages all in all. And what should I say? I'm pretty impressed. I've torn through that epos in a week or so, hardly reading something else. It definitely kinda sucked me in. Sorry to be so blunt, but I have almost no experience with mangas and found the speed in which you can read this stuff remarkable. I almost felt guilty while flipping through these pages, that I passed this amazing and detailed art with such velocity. But story-wise, it sure made sense, since a lot of the story consists out of chases, running around and decompressed fighting sequences. Sometimes it was a bit too much for my old brain and I felt dizzy and had to take a break. Someone said that Akira is very cinematic. It surely is. The apocalyptic visions Katsuhiro Otomo draws at the end of the second volume, for example, are mind-blowing. Beautiful visions of the apocalypse, if this is possible, but maybe an explanation why we humans are so drawn to our own downfall. These pages alone were worth the purchase of the set. Besides all the tech stuff in which Otomo excels, I liked his weird creatures the most. The lady Mayaku, the shrinkled superpowered kids, and most of all, the all-monstered out Tetsuo at the end. Wonderful grisly and gory stuff, depicted in the most perfect, stone-cold brilliance. To say that some of the panels reminded me of Möbius is probably a bit unfair to Otomo, because the influence was maybe the other way around. Don't know, this game of who was first is sometimes a bit tiresome and misleading anyway, at least in the realm of comics. My review until now sounds for sure like I have nothing but praises for Akira, but that's not true. In fact, I'm incredibly torn about this comic. On the one side, it was a real experience to read this, and the art was beautiful, and the storytelling incredibly fluid, and the panel layouts and the constant change of perspective part-wise breathtaking. Yada yada. But I don't know how to start with my critique, my actual critique. Please, all you manga lovers out there, please be gentle with me and chalk it to my inexperience with mangas or my plain stupidity. For a long story with that much of a page count, the characters left me quite cold. There was some character development in regard of the main character, Kaneda, and the main military dude, and the relationship between the main antagonists, Kaneda and Tetsuo, was interesting. Okay, interesting, but nothing more. The main plot about these superpowered and ultra-dangerous kids started as a sort of existential, maybe even political tale, but as the story goes on, it turns more or less into a giant monster freak show, giving up any plausibility to crude effects. hey, I like this kind of stuff. It sure is a visual treat, but a more serious or plausible background than all this psychokinetic and telekinetic nonsense would have been more interesting. This way, in the way that I see it, Akira is not a serious sci-fi story, but a goofy monster apocalypse. And therefore I can't help it to compare Akira with another goofy monster apocalypse that I'd reread recently, BPRD, The Plague of Frogs. The Plague of Frogs seems to be a totally different kind of comic, even though the story bears some similarities. But while in Akira, the cast left me quite uninterested most of the time. Some sort of okay Lord of the Flies douchebags who could find some redemption eventually. And of course, that creepy kid Akira is creepy. But in comparison, the whole BPRD cast consists out of unique characters that stay with you for a long time, while Kaneda, Kai and Kei and so on won't do it for me. They won't stay with me too long, I think. Yeah, apples and oranges, fair enough. But at some point, while speeding through these wonderfully drawn pages, the reading experience felt a bit superficial or hollow. All this running or driving around from point A to B and back again, all this shouting, die! It's a usual move in Akira to scream, die, before you shoot somebody. All this shouting and screaming, it felt sometimes a bit pointless. Okay, it was my first read-through. Maybe this impression changes with the second or third read. And I have to repeat right here that I overall still was impressed by Akira and I don't regret the purchase and please be gentle with me, etc., etc. But, and you had seen this but coming, haven't you? But, and now I come to the real tricky part. My prejudices towards manga and how Akira reinforced them, at least so far. First and foremost, the faces of the main characters. As much as I love Otomo's weirder creatures when it comes to the normal guys and girls, especially the younger ones, he sticks to the generic formula, how to draw faces the manga way. Maybe it's just me, but I've seen these kind of faces 1,000 times before, mostly in animes for kids in the German TV back then. Somehow I must have been overdosed with these big eyes and the specially manga-y way to depict screaming mouths. Really, I'm that allergic to the way, to these kind of screaming mouths. You won't believe it. No need to say, I guess, that I won't watch Akira the anime, not in another 35 years. Another thing that I associate with mangas are these creepy schoolgirls on the covers with short skirts and big wet eyes, a creepy sexing up of children. Fortunately, Akira has not some of those covers, but some scenes that suggest sex with 12 or at best 14-year-old girls. Somehow justified by the story, but still a bit strange. I don't want to overemphasize it because, as I said it, the context of the story, in the context of the story, it makes sense, but it doesn't weaken my bias either. Of all my reviews, this was maybe the most difficult and probably the most unfair one. But all that out of the way, I can reiterate how much I like how Kodansha Comics has done this 35th anniversary edition. It has the original reading order from back to front, black, grey and white art with some colored pages in the beginning, which works fine for me, and especially the original sound words. Some have criticized this. I totally like it. The Japanese sound words have an abstract quality that makes any translation unnecessary most of the time. By the way, you can find the translations of the sound words in the back of each book, and there you can check if the sound that you made up in your mind for the Japanese signs fits or not. Thanks for listening and watching. Sayonara.